It's 11:38 p.m. in Silver Lake, California, and you're listening to Night Call. Hello, and welcome to Night Call, a podcast for your strange days and lonely nights. I am Tess Lynch in Los Angeles with
Molly Lambert.
And over in New York, we have, as always,
Emily Yoshida. Hello.
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 So we have a corrections department issue to address, I think, right up top.
Cryptid corrections.
We've been talking a lot about cryptids and cryptid songs, and particularly the song Purple People Eater. Turns out we miscategorized the Purple People Eater, which is in fact not a cryptid, but an alien. Does anybody want to discuss the difference between those two? Because I feel like that's another foggy one for me.
Yeah, could they not be both?
I thought Molly brought this correction to our attention, but I figured that a cryptid has to be an earthly beast.
So
Correct.
cryptid is something that evolved on Earth that just like humans don't know about, maybe.
Right.
It's like
know
a mythical,
foggily about.
Yeah.
It's like an
Aliens.
Earth alien, a thing that we think exists, but that we don't know if it does or not.
Is the Earth Angel an alien?
Yes.
A sexy
An alien and a cryptid. Although the cryptid can't be a human, so I'm assuming the Earth Angel is a human. And then we were kind of looking through. There's an old list on the all of all.
R.I.P. the all. I miss the all every day.
Me too.
I feel like the all and Gawker, both sites that don't really exist anymore, have a ton of really good like state lists like this. I remember that Gawker did one that was like every good sandwich in every state, and they had voted and agreed on, you know, the definitive sandwich of every state. But the all has this one of the definitive secret scary monster of every state.
Yes.
Just want to clarify that while I don't like fictional maps, a real sandwich map is cool.
As long as the sandwich is the focal point of the
Or
map.
like a monster map.
Yeah.
Like a monster
We
map.
found
That's
a
fine.
map.
It's not a fictional map.
Yeah. It's grounded in reality. If it was like fake facts, I would hate that.
Well, I have to say that on this list, some of the more interesting, I mean, they're all really interesting, spooky, scary monsters, but the Kushtaka of Alaska is a were-otter. And it's a were-otter. There's also the Mogollon monster, I'm probably saying all of these wrong, of Arizona, which is a stinky Bigfoot. There are a lot of stinky Bigfoots out there. And I think California's is the Space Brain, which is a, I guess, illuminated brain that has no body around it and has eyes.
Ooh.
Someone spotted them on the highway, maybe?
Ooh, never heard of that one.
The Space Brain, the Michigan Dog Man, which is a man's body and a dog's head. Also a Dave Pilkey series of children's books that is very popular with kids called Dog Man.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe based on that. And New Mexico's Spring-Heeled Jack, which looks like something in between Satan and Batman.
Is that what Jumpin' Jack Flash is about?
Ooh.
It's
I
gas,
don't
gas,
know.
gas.
It's
I've
a
always
gas,
wondered
gas,
what
gas.
that song is about. I don't really want to know.
I like how Maine's monster on here is just Cujo.
Right, yeah. It's just a dog.
It's just a big dog.
There are some classics.
There are a couple of classics. There are a couple of ones from the same Squonk anthology that I told you guys about last week or the week before. A few of them, hail from there. But I think every state has a few cryptids, and these are just kind of hand-chosen, like, best cryptids.
Well, if you have a favorite cryptid in your state that is not mentioned on this list or one that you think deserves special recognition, give us a night call at 1-240-46-NIGHT. We'd love to hear all about it. Always down to hear about new cryptids.
Also, if you've just seen a weird creature that you think may have been a cryptid, please let us know.
Right.
I look at the Ologies, one of our favorite podcasts, Night Call adjacent podcast, Ologies. They have a Facebook group where people are always trying to identify like different bugs and stuff. And I saw a ladybug larva on there today and realized I'd seen them in the wild myself, but they are like the creepiest looking larva.
I don't
They're
know
like
if
all
I've seen a ladybug larva. What?
it's like a black and yellow weevilish looking thing that has like kind of little spikies coming out of it.
Love thinking about larva.
Love thinking about larva.
Ologies.
Baby bugs.
Ologies is the larva pod.
It's one of those words that really sounds like what it means.
Yes, exactly. Also larval.
Larval. Oh, it's cute.
I don't know. It's like
it looks like a little
dangerous
Pokemon.
to me. Maybe.
Ladybugs are good.
Yeah, we love ladybugs. And the larvae apparently eat aphids. So if you see the larva around, that's a good thing. But I always was like, oh, those bugs. I don't like those bugs. But now I'm coming around. I don't like their looks, though. I'll be honest with you about that.
They're
Some
definitely
bugs are good.
scarier looking.
What if bugs are aliens?
What if? I mean, I thought we agreed octopi are aliens, so why not
that
bugs?
accidentally wound up on Earth.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I read a debunked theory that there's people who believe that like all diseases come from space.
Really?
Yes. Don't let the anti-vaxxers hear about this.
I know.
They'll
Yeah,
laugh
they'll have a
right on.
field day.
They're like the common cold came from a moon rock.
Yeah.
And that's how it exists.
Hey, speaking of the moon,
Yeah.
Yes.
let's have another moon minute. Molly found an article explaining that the moon is shrinking, which is bad news, right?
Not only is the moon shrinking,
Fewer germs, though, I guess.
That's true. Big if true.
not only is the moon shrinking, the moon is shrinking, and that is causing moonquakes.
Isn't it weird that we can't see the moon having an earthquake? Do you think if you just stared at it long enough with a telescope, you could witness a moonquake?
You can barely see an earthquake unless it's a big magnitude one on Earth. Like, unless it was one that caused massive geological restructuring.
But I think that these aren't they? It's causing like debris. I mean, you'd think that the craters would like kind of implode and that if you had a good enough telescope, you might be able to peep a moonquake.
There's a subheading here, ongoing shrinkage. So why is it? Is it just shrinking because of gravity? I'm going to make a science guess. I don't know.
Does the moon have tectonic plates? Like,
Oh, yeah.
so it's
Does it have a molten core?
It has fault lines. Here's what it says.
Yeah.
It says they found out that this is definitely happening because the moon is shrinking, not from asteroid impact or activity deep inside the moon. It doesn't seem like they are even trying to address why the moon is shrinking.
Clickbait from Live
Just
Science.
an FYI. Did you guys enjoy the most recent full moon?
No, because you couldn't see it here. I mean, I enjoyed it.
Nice.
You could see it the night before. It's been very misty and weird weather.
It was raining,
over here.
so I enjoyed that as much as I would have enjoyed the full moon.
I don't give this rain a good rating.
Why?
It was too... I didn't
steamy?
feel like it was purposeful enough.
It was Misty Mountain Hop.
It was a little too misty. I've been getting these terrible headaches from the barometric pressure out here because it keeps, like, the humidity will increase, and I think the pressure falls. And it would be relieved by, like, a big
Was the rain a monkey paw?
Yes,
Did you wish
the
for the rain
was
and
a
now,
monkey paw, and then I was like, I just wanted more. It needed to be amplified, or like
it's unusual to get it so late in the season.
it is. I
The
know,
calm-
very weird
the
weather.
calm before the fire.
In other moon news, you guys, we are now all aware that Posh Spice has been drinking full moon water,
Yeah.
which is water that has been charged under a full moon. Obviously, you can make your own. You can also buy it on Etsy for it ranges. There's a big range in price for the moon water.
Do you think that Starfire water also charges the water under the moon, or do you think these are two completely different, separate water theories in practice?
I think they're separate cosmological,
separate water cosmologies.
separate water one is star-based and the other is moon-based.
What is Starfire water?
That's the one they sell it at
Oh,
MCAFE.
that's that one. Okay,
We talked about it earlier.
the one that
that
Emily's
Yeah.
into. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah. Wait, how much is the moon water, or full moon water rather?
I'm sure whatever Posh Spice drinks.
The Posh Spice website was, I believe, in German, so I just read recaps of it, but then I went to Etsy to be like, Full Moon Water, should I be selling Full Moon Water? And
we should sell Night Call Full Moon Water. That should be our full Alex Jones.
I don't think I could, in good conscience, sell Full Moon Water. Also, it has to be distilled.
Get in the water business.
What if we all like spit in it?
Oh no,
Molly.
We have a whole separate Patreon for people who want the water with our spit in it, and for mukbang videos, and to be fin-domed.
Even just saying the mukbang and the spit water together, I'm like, no.
Guys, that's our regular Patreon. That's what a Patreon is.
Well, don't tell them that's what's coming down the pipeline. They're going to be
We'll
new
only
tiers.
sell you the Full Moon Water if you want it. We'll take a poll. She also was saying during her week-long detox, she also listened to true crime podcasts. So,
Why would you do that during a detox? Like a detox and true crime.
Yeah,
that's what she listens to unwind from being a footballer's wife.
A footballer's wife.
I don't know. Listening to like a true crime podcast makes me feel worse than like eating a burger or whatever you might be cleansing yourself from. I don't know.
Well,
it's the guilty pleasure. As long as you're not on a detox, I think it's great to listen to true crime. But if you're on a detox, that should be detoxed from you.
Well, what if the true crime story is in fact fictional and about a fictional conspiracy? Maybe we should talk about that after we plug our book club.
Right. Well, speaking of our Patreon and all the weird kinky shit we have going on there, we're doing a book club, motherfuckers.
Actually, we are reading like one of the most erotic odysseys of all time.
It is. It's kind of an OG erotic odyssey.
Yeah, we just announced our first ever book club pick, which is going to be Valley of the Dolls. We are very excited about it. I've never read it, so I'm super excited about that.
How have you never read it, Emily? It blew my mind. I'm so excited.
I'm going to admit, I've only skim read it at a bookstore.
What? I assumed you guys had already read it.
I think maybe you read me the dirty parts on the phone.
Oh, for sure I did. That was definitely
I never maybe read the whole thing in context.
Well, this will be a new journey for one and a half of us. So we're very excited about it. We're excited to share it with you guys. We are going to be doing dropping our first ever Patreon book club podcast for subscribers at the $5 level and above on June 15th. So you have until then to get caught up and check out the book. And also, if you subscribe at that level, you can get a 15% discount on the book from our friends at Skylight Books in Los Angeles, but they'll ship it anywhere. And you can also just get it at your local library or somewhere chill like that. We love libraries.
Audiobooks, probably an audiobook.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm also going to say, if you want to be like George Costanza and just watch the movie and listen to the episodes, that's okay too, as long as you subscribe to our Patreon.
Yeah, exactly.
And before that episode drops, if you're reading the book and have any fun thoughts or feedback about it that we might want to bring up on the show, give us a night call or a night email and let us know your thoughts about the book so we can include it in the show.
I'm very excited to talk about the nearly 3-hour-long movie that Emily made us watch, and apparently I am the only one who enjoyed.
I have no idea how I feel about this movie. I wanted to foist it upon you guys so I could get your thoughts on it. I saw the film we're discussing today, Under the Silver Lake, at Cannes just about a year ago, because Cannes going on now. It wasn't quite booed there, but it was there were just snickers of derision from all the French journalists there. And it was sort of perceived as a flop out of the festival. And I was and we had already started the podcast by then. And I was there's maybe never been a film this night call at Cannes before, but also I can't tell if I love it or hate it. But
that's the problem. Yeah. That's why I liked it, because the whole time I was like, what? I don't know how I feel about this movie at all. And I read that because of the very divided reaction at Cannes, that it was, the release was delayed. There was a rumor that it was being re-edited, but then I think that those rumors were false. But yeah, Under the Silver Lake was written, produced, and directed by David Robert Mitchell, who did It Follows, which I loved. I think we all liked It Follows.
Loved It Follows.
Yeah.
This is the definition of a blank check movie, though, to use a term from our buddies at Blank Check. It Follows was such a success and such a breakout hit, and if David Robert Mitchell ever gets a deep enough filmography, that he'd be a good candidate for that podcast, because this is a textbook example of somebody just like allowed to make a 3-hour like meandering conspiracy epic about pop songs and underground caves for harems in Los Angeles. That's like also kind of an incel / Reddit conspiracy theorist story. I don't know. It's like a lot in the salad.
It's like QAnon the movie.
Yeah.
I will say, for me, this movie kind of lives and dies by the fact that it stars Andrew Garfield.
Yes.
And that was what did not work for me.
Oh, really?
Like, the whole time.
You didn't like the Garf?
No.
Oh, man.
I was
Really?
doing a little joke tweet. I wanted to make like Hey Girl memes about him.
Oh man, remember Hey Girl memes? That feels like such a
but it was
innocent
like,
time.
this guy is like the real like Silver Lake guy that everybody's dated.
He is everyone's Silver Lake ex-boyfriend. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Which did not make me like love him exactly.
Oh,
I
don't
liked
think you're
him for
supposed
embracing his. I mean, I admired his performance, but yeah, he's like a really. I mean, he literally smells bad
Yeah,
for
right, he
almost
smells
the
bad.
entire movie. He has a very like. It's a very studied and unique way of walking and running and like holding himself, even lying on the ground. That's like everything he does is very pointed.
His run is incredible. The
His
like
run is
sneaky
amazing.
run is so good.
Yes. It's very close to like a Napoleon Dynamite
I just
kind
found
of
him,
thing.
like a void of charisma, which maybe is the point.
That is the point.
Yeah.
It's like
I will not pretend to know the intentions of this film from the creator, but I do feel pretty safe in saying that we're not supposed to like Andrew Garfield's character.
Right. Correct, I think. Well, first of all, can we just say that there will be spoilers? Because I feel the need to spoil.
Well, and this
Right.
and this film
I
is
guess-
available on demand. You can get it, basically any platform. It was out theatrically for like all of 2 days before they dropped it on VOD. It's kind of the first ever A24 fiasco, but they've kind of quietly swept it under the rug.
it's very watchable. I mean,
Yeah.
like the problem also is that I watched a good movie first.
right.
I saw The Farewell,
Which is so
I'm sure
good.
which I'm sure we'll talk about more, but which is an awesome, great movie. And I was crying from watching The Farewell because it was so good.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and now time for Under the Silver Lake. And then it was just the Benny Hill theme song playing the whole time.
Yes.
I think it was probably also Narcissism of Small Differences. I was like, I would write this movie, but
With a woman?
differently.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know?
No, I'm partially defensive of this movie because I'm like, I kind of want to do something like this at some point.
Well,
so
yes.
we better like some of this stuff.
But no,
It also it's a very funny, intentionally
it's got funny
movie.
part. I mean, from the part where there's a really long dialogue scene during a sex scene,
Exactly.
with him and Ricky Lindholm. As soon as Ricky Lindholm turned up, I was like, ooh, Southland Tales. We're in
Right.
Southland Tales territory with just some good comedians playing weird character roles.
Also, there's
All
a
the
paddle boat chase, which is awesome.
In the Echo Park
paddle
Lake.
boat chase in the Echo Park Lake.
That was I mean,
Patrick Fischler is really good in it, and that's a nod to Mulholland Drive. I mean, that's the other thing. So I finished the movie, which is
it's 3 hours long.
It's 3 hours long, but just to kind of sum up the plot,
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield plays a guy who's very aimless and kind of bottoming out, and he's in his mid-30s. He lives in Silver Lake. He's a conspiracy theorist, kind of. But he basically he's also a voyeur.
He's just a man-child.
So,
he's obsessed
he's a
with
man-child.
Kurt Cobain and Nintendo. Like, he's just stuck in the stuff of his youth.
He's like Ready Player One.
So he becomes interested in a couple of mysteries that he thinks might be related that are going on in his apartment complex in his immediate neighborhood. One of the mysteries is the disappearance of a neighbor that he's been like maybe trying to romance. And the other one is that all over Silver Lake, someone's been graffitiing, "Beware the dog killer." And apparently a lot of dogs are going missing and they think someone's like out, killing the dogs. So he's kind of like just intrigued by these mysteries. Also, he has no job. He's like not trying to get a job. He's going to be evicted. His car was repossessed. So he's just kind of falling apart and spending all of his time like obsessing over these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
But then after you finish the movie, you can then go on an Easter egg hunt, and there are all of these crazy Easter eggs in the movie, which also kind of lead nowhere.
Right.
Which in the movie, everything kind of leads nowhere. It just you get deeper and deeper and deeper into trying to solve these mysteries, and then it just doesn't really matter.
Now
See, that's the question.
It's a movie about the pointlessness of Easter eggs.
Right.
Yes. I think it's a movie about the internet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I was like, oh, it's about how the internet kind of like takes your drive away from like existing in your world as it appears to you. And it makes you feel as though everything has hidden and deeper levels, and you go trying to like find what they are, but you just end up going like deeper and deeper into your own kind of id and like become really disconnected with people around you.
Tuss, you also get really into local mysteries.
If there was a dog killer on your block, you would be on the case.
Maybe
solved,
this
guys.
movie made me uncomfortable because it like read me to filth a little bit too much too. Where I was like, is it like I drive around aimlessly and like read people's weird flyers they post on things? I was walking around in Griffith Park today, and I was thinking about the movie.
Yep.
Going to find the tunnel.
Of course.
Go
all the tunnel stuff.
Yeah.
Again, some of the stuff we were talking about last week with the Getty house and the gun cache, like it's not all possible.
Right.
It is. I mean, it's interesting though when you spend your time like reading and going deeper and deeper. And like I also thought that the movie kind of didn't really spend any time with him in front of a computer or searching on his phone, which is obviously what it was portraying, but not like
they found a more cinematic way to represent that. Yeah. And like put this sort of Hitchcock type score over it. So it's like, it's a real adventure, but the actual reality of the adventure for most of it is like pretty mundane. It's him like, decoding things on the back of a pizza box and stuff. Like,
I wish he had just had the clamshell phone thing from It Follows.
Oh my God. Well, that's one of the things that I think he's really good at, David Robert Mitchell, is just making a place that's familiar seem foreign. And we were talking right before we started recording with our producer Roy out in LA, and we were talking about It Follows, and I was like, what I loved about It Follows so much was that it kind of like took the past and the future and put them in a blender and then like poured it onto a geographic location because it had all of these things that felt kind of retro and reminded you of your childhood, but it definitely also was like kind of the future. And then it was also, a really like beautiful, like beautifully shot kind of way of looking at Detroit. And
this movie was beautifully shot.
It was gorgeous. Yeah.
It's really nice. The kind of self-mythologizing it does, like I feel like he's so obviously just like a shitpost, like Philip Marlowe type character. And it's like, like every generation gets the version of that character that it deserves. And like, this is the one that we get. It's like, down to the like, looking at his neighbors in various states of undress type thing. But it's just like the more depressing version of it this time around.
Right.
It's like Vertigo depressing.
Yeah.
If I think about him being just a bad psychopath from the beginning, then yeah, sure. It makes sense.
First of all, I think, and this is my theory, but I think he is supposed to be the dog killer.
Well, yes.
But then also, so I went deep into the subreddit.
The Reddit is like
for this movie. It's really good.
Well, the one thing to note about the Reddit is that it started flourishing like weeks before this ever was released in the States, like off of a pirated copy from a teeny tiny UK release. And so
whoa,
like
really?
it was already in full flower by the time it was released in the States. And it's just so funny because it's like it was already being passed around like this, you know, forbidden thing. Like, oh, have you seen this? Have you heard the good word? Like, have you seen Under the Silver Lake? And like I was saying before it came out, I was like, man, like releasing it almost feels like defeating the power of the myth that it could have. Like, I mean, there's you know, certainly some money to be made by releasing it on VOD and stuff, but it could become like this gigantic cult thing if you just never release it.
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
That it should have been like the movie that they don't want you to see.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that was cool was, so there's a computer scientist guy who was a cryptography consultant on this movie, and so there are all of these like ciphers to decode. So there are these dolls that represent they're watching
How to Marry a Millionaire.
Yes, and there are dolls, and then underneath there's the Zodiac killer code, which you can crack. And then there's also, like, in a coffee shop in the beginning of the movie, there's a guy who's wearing, like, a weird hipster T-shirt with animal decals on it. And if you take the first letter of each animal, it spells out Beware Dog Killer. And then there's something on, like, the ticker at the bottom of a news program that they're watching at one point, and it's about the Copial code. And so I guess the Kevin Knight, who was the cryptography consultant, like created a program to translate the Copial cipher. It's just like you just keep going deeper and deeper into it. My husband got like really hooked on finding all the codes in a way that he hasn't since True Detective, when he was like, "What's Reddit? Oh my God, look at this! Like there are so many theories."
It's a trap.
Yeah, it's a trap.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, if you try and like figure it out, then you feel like that's kind of like a interesting kind of like compliment to the movie of like you're just ignoring things that need to get done and just being like, what's it mean? What's it mean?
Yeah.
I think the one thing about this movie is it's not as weird as it thinks it is.
Right. That's the thing, is I think like I did keep comparing it in my mind to Southland Tales and being like, Southland Tales is legitimately weird. This feels a little bit too much like someone trying their hardest to like be weird.
A naked middle-aged woman with birds is like a little bit of like, what's weird?
She was really hot. She was very hot.
Yeah. She was super hot, and then she had weird birds, and then it was like, that seems like a strange thing.
Some of it just seemed like it was like a David Lynch mixtape.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I feel like another thing that, to the degree that there has been a conversation around this movie, but there has been just among, you know, critics and stuff and people who've seen it, but just the kind of like, is it toxic masculinity or is it a critique of toxic masculinity?
It's definitely a critique.
It is.
It's 100% a critique. I mean, especially when Topher Grace's character, first of all, it's super weird that almost none of these characters have names.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I got really jazzed about this movie, so now I'm yelling. But I will say that when they have a drone, and the drone is like, you know, peeping on like some lady undressing, and they're kind of like just sitting there being losers looking at it. It was definitely, to me, felt like it was
crying, and it's just like, oh God, what are we doing?
You're supposed to feel gross. Like, you're supposed to think they're gross. You're supposed to kind of acknowledge that they feel a little bit gross, but that they're going to continue to do it relentlessly.
Right, again, that's the vertigo.
Yeah.
We had these people who were living across the street from us for a while, and they crashed a drone into our like trash cans and then wrote us a letter being like, hey, can you return our drone? It was like in the back of your yard right by like your windows, and it appears to be crashed into your trash cans. And only later I was like, oh, they were spying on us. Like, to me, I was just like, interesting. They took their drone for a little flight around the neighborhood, and it's like, no. Yeah.
And then they asked you to return it?
And I did. And I did, because I was just like, I don't want this drone near me anymore.
What you should have done is put a geolocator device on it so that you would know when it was nearby.
So I could track, I could out-drone the drone.
Down. That feels like a Neighbors-esque comedy or something.
Train a hawk.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad that you guys watched this. I needed to bring it to the hive, to the table.
You needed to share it with the class. and I'm glad you did.
I mean, I'd seen it twice because I saw it at the festival and I saw it again before they released it, and they were like, you know, trying to figure out what to do with it. I think it was before they kind of just dumped it. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like I have a friend who saw it. I mean, it's a friend you guys both know, but and was like, "Oh God, is that guy me? Is that me? Have I been that guy all along?" And I'm like, "No, like I lived with that. I was the roommate of that guy before. Like the kind of like quote unquote like filmmaker who like has a sort of girlfriend / friends with benefits who comes by and has been like doing background on Mad Men. So she comes by and like secretary costumes and stuff, and they just like get stoned and like maybe have sex, and I have to like be listening in the closet next door."
See, we'd rather watch the movie about you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe it was
very
too
evocative.
close to home. Again, I was just like, I know too many of these locations, so they can't be like exotified in any way to me, you know?
Well, it's
like,
also, I think, a really good kind of commentary on how if you're living in LA, most people I know are very close to like, you know, losing their homes, losing their cars. Like we've all kind of been there in the past 10 years or so, but you still continue, like as long as you have that balcony that overlooks the pool, even though you're about to be evicted, it appears fine. You're going to the cemetery screenings, you're going to these like weird parties in a crypt.
Going to the standard
and
roof.
you can kind of pretend, you can kind of pretend that nothing terrible is happening, you know, and it can kind of stretch on seemingly forever. Like they come to evict you, you beg for another day, and then there you are the next day on the balcony looking at the beautiful pool. So, and also shout out to Tomato Pie, which is like, I think the best pizza on the East Side, even though it's very spicy pizza unexpectedly. Love seeing Tomato Pie on
I
film.
guess I feel like this movie was like, it's like of a touristy point of view, and it feels like it was made by a tourist. And what was so good about It Follows, and It Follows was such like, felt like I guess maybe I also just don't really know what Detroit looks like, so it was like,
so you would be a tourist in Detroit, so it rang true to you.
I disagree. I don't really feel like it feels touristy to me. I think like the particular like patina of patheticism that is nailed in this movie is like, I don't think you would get that if you were just a tourist. I think you like, maybe you're somebody who moved here from Ohio or whatever. Here, I say here, like I'm there right now. But
right, it's a transplant,
but
movie.
like has definitely been there for a while, enough for things to get kind of sad. And that feels that doesn't feel touristy to me anymore, because that just feels like a big part of the LA experience for a lot of people. So
most people here are transplants anyway.
Not true.
Not true that most people are transplant. Not most people in Silver Lake. I would venture a guess.
Only because they pushed out all the people.
Agreed. 100. I'm not saying it's good. I totally agree. But I think a lot of 30-year-olds or 33-year-olds. I think he's specifically 33.
Yeah, I guess I just found him so boring. I was like, wished the movie. I don't know. I liked the milieu, but I didn't. He was just so gross.
Did you like when he got stuck to a car door handle, and it was like a Spider-Man comic with bubblegum?
There was like the
Andrew
Spider-Man
Garfield
thing. I mean, I guess it's like interesting if you were making all the Spider-Man movies and then you were like, I want to make the opposite of that. You know, I want to
definitely the opposite of
as
that.
far away, because he was even like the likable guy in the Facebook movie.
No, that was his breakout. It was like, he's like a little puppy. I love him.
He always played likable guys. So I guess it's just like,
well,
I don't know. I guess I just wanted somebody a little Nick Cageier, you know, like the best QAnon movie, National Treasure.
Well, Night Call listeners, if you've seen Under the Silver Lake, if you've decoded every single code in Under the Silver Lake, if you have any thoughts, please give us a night call at 1-240-46-NIGHT or night email at nightcallpodcast@gmail.com. Do you guys want to take a night email?
Oh, yes.
So this email comes to us from Trevor. And Trevor writes, "Hello, ladies of Night Call. The mention of panpsychism in the last edition of Night Call caught me dead in my tracks. You see, I studied for a year under Galen Strawson, the most famous panpsychist philosopher. He was a tall, deliberate man, but skinny and somewhat hunched, like he was unsure and tentative about his presence in the world. He had a larger-than-usual head supporting an untamed fountain of long gray hairs that grew up and out in all directions and gave him the look of an old hermit on a mountaintop. His lectures pondered the strange vicissitudes of life in the world and his deep conviction that there surely was consciousness somewhere, but that it just wasn't anywhere he could locate it. The stuff of the world is mind stuff, he would say, to clarify that anything has the capability of conscious, energetic movement. Galen himself seemed to be a consciousness without memory or experience. He would talk about forgetting having a wife or children, and often began statements with, "I'm sitting here, before launching into a thought, as though he was a floating consciousness trying to get into character as a person, before doing person things like making statements and talking with students." With this, I wholeheartedly recommend Galen's candidacy for the Night Call Museum. Peace, love, 420 from Austin. Trevor.
Peace, love, and 420 to you, Trevor. Thank you for getting in touch. That was a really good
This is
night email.
So evocative.
Yeah.
I feel like I know Galen. I'm not familiar with Galen, and I wasn't even familiar with panpsychism before we talked about it last week, and then I had to look it up afterwards. Do you guys have any professors that you had a special memories of?
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody who was a panpsychist, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, no panpsychist. There were two professors. One of them was a literature professor who was super strange. I took her class on...
Oh, was she the one who married poetry?
No, that was a TA. Unshockingly, it was a TA. This woman was obsessed with King Arthur, and she would kind of like vacillate between talking about chivalric code, and she had lost like 200. She lost a significant amount of weight, and so she would tie in her weight loss with like getting really into King Arthur, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. But also she was not a fan of my writing, so I eventually hated her. And then there was a guy who taught a class on film architecture, and he was just super interesting. I think German guy.
What does film architecture mean?
It was literally just buildings in films.
In movies?
Yeah. It was one of the best classes ever.
That's an amazing class.
Yeah, college
Holy
is fun.
shit.
It was a lot of like The Last Man and Metropolis and
Yeah.
Blade Runner and like cityscapes.
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
It was an awesome
I'm
class.
jealous of that class.
Yeah.
You just said college is fun, Molly, but like my college was so full of like requirements, and then I just made a film. Like I didn't get to do all the like noodly, like fun, weird electives that a lot of people do.
Tess and I both picked the college where you could do the noodliest stuff.
Yes, but that was part of my major because I was an art and architecture major.
You were an architecture major?
I wanted to do architecture for my first 2 years, and then I did like history of art and architecture, and then pivoted to writing.
Man,
Yeah.
I had no idea what was the best architect you studied.
Don't ask me these questions.
Okay,
I'm already racking my brain for the professor's name who did film
architecture of panpsychism.
My first couple of years, I went to Loyola Marymount, and the Loyola. I think all the Loyola schools have really rigorous core requirements. Like you have to take a certain amount of philosophy classes and theology classes and stuff. And those actually ended up being probably my favorite classes, including film classes that I ever took in
Did you talk about
school.
Panpsychism in your philosophy class?
No, she just looked it up yesterday.
But we talked about that's where I learned about like the noosphere and stuff. And, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was like truly like mind breaking stuff, and I learned it from like a Jesuit priest, and so it was like kind of super chill, and it was like in this pretty old building on the campus of Loyola, which like looks like a resort, and we were like just thinking about all being cells in a brain someday. It was great. But he was by no means any kind of character like this guy that Trevor described, but it was a great class.
we recently on our Facebook page, this is kind of related because if we were in college now, I assume that we would all be really interested in neural networks, which I knew nothing about. Neural networks, knew nothing about them. But somebody on Facebook, Nightcaller Charlotte, prompted a neural network with the prompt "Strange Days and Lonely Nights" and got like a night call poem. Would you guys mind if I read it?
Yes, please read it.
Okay. It's so "Strange Days and Lonely Nights. I was so proud that I was a woman. I had no idea that I could be happy. I couldn't seem to say goodbye to her. I was so proud that I was a woman. I could tell the universe has changed. I'd rather have a friend than a partner. I'd rather have one and a partner than a husband. And then suddenly I was alone. It wasn't until later that I realized that these lonely nights and lonely nights were no fun, that I was no longer there, that I could hear her whispering in my ear, I'd rather live in the present, live our lives. But in order to make it there, I had to take off. But to feel so empty and alone, it seemed I had to go. And then I went away to the desert. I left a big mess. And after a while, I came back. It's like a very night-cally,
It's so
predictive poem.
It's so wonderful.
Wow.
We'll have to post it on the Patreon site on the show notes. That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
I played around with this thing for a little while because they sent us the link for it. It's called talktotransformer.com. That's the name of the neural network. I only vaguely understand neural networks. Like, it's just supposed to be like a simulation of how the brain works, but using like, I guess by scraping stuff off the internet. Is that how they?
I think so. But it's,
At
like
least?
predictive text that has been like crowdsourced from the internet, I guess.
Yeah. So it's different. I always kind of do like enjoy those memes where they're like, I like type "I love" and then just like do whatever the autofill is, and after that, and I mean, I never post them, but I always like seeing what my phone thinks I would say because it's always a little bit spooky to see that version of yourself. Yeah, this kind of felt like this, but I guess more like sourcing from a larger pool of information than just what you would put on your phone. I tried to make it do some Game of Thrones content. But it really felt like it was just grabbing text from, well, it even said it was like from Screen Rant or something. It basically made a like automated content. Like, you know, that's a thing that actually happens. Like
SEO scraping.
Yeah, SEO scraping, but then like automatically like AI generated content. Like the robots are taking away the content farm jobs.
But it became popular, right? You did like a Game of Thrones thing and it got shared like 1,000 times.
It was just like in the text, it was like, this has been shared.
Oh, that's hilarious. I was like, what does this mean?
Oh, it's so weird. No, it was like it just had all of the customary, you know, text at the end of a blog post.
That's so funny.
Do you guys
and weird.
remember there was a Clarissa Explains It All episode where she like builds a program that writes poems and then wins a poetry contest with a poem that the robot wrote?
I do not remember that.
It's great. It's the best because it was like probably the first time anyone ever showed a girl like programming something.
Right, yeah.
Also ethics and ethics
yeah,
and STEM.
yeah. Then she tells everybody because she feels bad.
There was a Wishbone episode that involved a poetry assignment. That's a thing that I remember. But I think it didn't have anything to do with computers. It was like, I think it was a Cyrano de Bergerac episode. So he was like having somebody else write a poem for him.
You were like, Wishbone delivered the Pentagon Papers. That was a very
incredible,
incredible coup by Wishbone.
You know what's a weird show? Wishbone.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever gone back and watched YouTube videos of that? It's kind of hard to believe.
All children's programming is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All children's programming is under the Silver Lake.
It is.
We have one more night call we wanted to get to before we close out today. Coming to us from John. Here he is.
Hi, Night Call. So in episode 62, you talked to Penny Lane about her documentary, Hail Satan, and the challenge that the Satanic Temple posed to supposed religious freedom in the USA. I haven't seen the documentary, but the value of this film seem pretty obvious from your discussion. So here's my question. Years ago, I was a teaching assistant for a course, Cults and New Religious Movements, taught by the late David Kinsley, who argued that the term cult should not be based on beliefs, since all religions seem to have some strange beliefs, at least to outsiders, but cult should just be reserved for groups based on behavior, how they treat people within the group, whether they let them have access to their families, have some measure of freedom, something like that. Do you think this is true? Do you think behavior is the only measure of something being designated a cult? Or do you think there are some beliefs which are dangerous enough or that they ought to be designated as cults? Thanks so much for the podcast. It's amazing. Bye-bye.
Great question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the call, John. Yeah, this totally got me thinking, and we were thinking it was very appropriate for talking about Under the Silver Lake as well. I think at this point in history, especially like after, you know, this kind of wave of cult-like activity, like in the 60s and 70s and stuff, that the kinds of things that seem to signify a cult and the kinds of things that cults believe in and the way that cults address that kind of seem to supersede like the actual mechanics of a cult. You know, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is like a good way to have some perspective on what actually is a cult or not, because you can have somebody that believes in crystals or energy healing or whatever, like, but it's not going to be a cult because you're not holding people against their will or making people pay you or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting distinction to bring up.
Yeah, but if you're using the crystals in a group.
I mean, I think that there's the differentiation between, you know, a cult that believes in terrible or ridiculous things versus just a group of people who believe in terrible or ridiculous things. You can condemn, you know, horrible beliefs across the board, but without dictating other people's behavior, I don't think it's a cult.
Is Reddit a cult?
No, because, well, unless the rules of the Reddit were that you know, had to pay a certain amount of your money to, like, the moderator.
Right.
I mean, the basic rules of any kind of, like, website forum, I don't think are cult-like.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a thing. I feel like there has to be some kind of addictive quality to a cult, like whether it's like some kind of dependence or something.
Let's talk about like Reddit conspiracies, though. Like if you start like if it becomes like an addictive behavior, like an internet addictive behavior, where it's like you're placing going on the message board above like interacting with human beings, like
right.
That's culty.
Or like if you show any doubt or wavering from whatever the conspiracy of the day is on the forum that you're like, and then you're shamed for it by your peers, as opposed to just being like, oh, like that's an interesting way of thinking about it, or like I disagree, but whatever, you can go your own way. That feels cult-like for sure. I mean, I don't know if that. I think there's a fine line where it becomes religious and not.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, honestly, more so than people who have like internet addictions or whatever. I think multi-level marketing is the most non-religious cult-like thing. Which also so now a week ago, if you're listening to this, but Jane Marie posted on Twitter a link to an article in The Cut about side hustles, like, how, good ways to like make a buck. And the last one was, maybe you should join an MLM. And it was like,
really?
What? Yes, it was in The Cut. I was so disappointed.
I think it was a joke, maybe.
They did have a little link at the end that was like, just make sure you know what you're doing. And it was like, you're going to lose all your friends. But like a lot of the proposed solutions to making more money were like, sell your hair and stuff where you're like, it would be nice if people could have a job.
Article.
Yeah, that's
very
horrible.
Depressing. But if you really kind of look into the people who are super, super involved with MLM, it's like the beliefs part of it where they actually, some of them really do believe that what they're selling is good and everyone needs it. But it's more the behavior that they're expected to follow in order to sell this product and the way that, they kind of fit into like the greater scheme of things that it's problematic.
Is like Herbalife an example of that or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Rodin and Fields and everyone go listen to The Dream. But there's there's a good Facebook group called Sounds Like MLM But Okay, that, because Facebook is like obviously the vehicle where all of these people are selling these things, and then you just tag that group. And
yeah, I mean, it's so weird when you bring capitalism into it, because it's like capitalism is basically a religion in our country. Like,
exactly.
And so when you're
I was
gonna
say
that,
like, is like heterosexuality a cult? Like, I feel like there's a lot of bad groups that people buy into. Is like,
right,
these things are true.
Yeah, I mean, anything can be a cult almost. That definition.
Well, I guess it's also like I'm just always very skeptical of group activity. I'm always a little scared of like a crowd turning into a mob.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like a soul
in
cycle?
a bad direction. Well, yeah, there's just something about like losing yourself to the will of the group that is inherently depersonalizing, and it like can be good. It can be the best feeling in the world. It's why people do psychedelic drugs. But it could also be bad. And a lot of people who join groups, it's because they like don't know what they want, and they want someone to be like, here's what you want. You want to do this.
That's why
it could be used for good.
That's why in hindsight, I feel like the entire EDM boom was like one big like sub moment. Like everybody just wanted to be like dominated by
it's a mega church.
The drop. I mean, I don't know if I would call that a cult necessarily, but it has, because it's sort of just this sort of aspirational thing, it kind of has a spiritual quality to it. And the way that, people feel when they're on drugs and they're listening to music like that, you can take on a spiritual quality. I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
People need community, and there's just always that fear that like one day one of the people in the community will be like, okay, now you're in this cult, you know? You get
now it's time to take this to the next level.
I feel like you must, like Tess, as a parent, people must invite you to weird things all the time that you don't know if they're cults or not.
Well, now I feel unpopular. I'm like, what does she mean by invite me to a lot of things? I've had a few friends who were into multi-level marketing schemes and tried to get me involved. One of them was like very, very pushy. They're called Huns. Because it's like, hey, hun, how are you? So they're referred to as Huns. And one of them, I was very offended that she thought I was the type of person to, very offended. First, I was like, she thinks I don't have a glowing complexion. And then I was like, she thinks I would sign up to sell like very overpriced, crappy cosmetics. No, I buy my stuff at the drugstore, hun. Come on.
But if you want to buy water that we spit in, or some bonus episodes, join our book club.
One of those things exists and one of them doesn't. Just spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Two truths and a lie. Join our nightclub Patreon. But also, as always, you can call us at 240-46-NIGHT with all your questions about the universe.
You can also follow us on social media. Our Twitter is Nightcall Pod, Instagram Nightcall Podcast, and Facebook Nightcall Podcast.
And, of course, support us on our Patreon at patreon.com/nightcall. You can join our book club. You can get all sorts of other fun stuff. We're planning some events coming up this summer that we'll let you guys know about as soon as we know when they are. And subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And leave us a rating and review while you're there. Why don't you? Thank you all so much for listening this week. We'll be back next week.
Yeah, the moon is shrinking, but our love for our fans is only growing each day.
Aww. It's very sweet.
We're a good cult.
We are. We're the good kind of cult. So far.
But also, give us your money at patreon.com/nightcall.
See you next week.